Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the UX World, the Practical Voice First podcast. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, what is Kane doing speaking at me on a Wednesday? Why is this happening? What's going on? Well, let me explain. Every single day, probably for the past couple of months, I have been speaking to somebody within the voice space, whether that's a business owner or founder or somebody trying to build a business in the voice space, whether that's somebody who is a designer or a developer or a researcher, whether it's at an agency or a startup. I'm just having quite a lot of conversations. Some of them lead to podcast episodes, some of them don't, but they're all really, really interesting nevertheless. And I had a particularly interesting conversation this week with Govy Singh. And Govy, you can find him on Twitter at GovyThinks, and he lives in Austria. He runs an apartment block in Vienna. He rents it out to tourists and stuff like that. And we were chatting about how he's put Alexas, or Echoes rather, in all of his apartment buildings to help people navigate Austria, navigate Vienna, find out how to work things in the apartment and stuff like that. He listens to the podcast, he's been engaging with us quite a lot on Twitter, and at the end I kind of asked, what could we do to improve things on the UX world? And Govy's suggestion was this. He said that the quality that we have and the quality that we're producing is always high, and the one thing that could be improved is to publish more, because once a week might not be enough. So thank you, Govy, for the suggestion. And what we're going to do this week is we're going to try that. We're going to try publishing twice a week. And so what I've been doing is this weekend I spoke to an extremely influential and notable person in the voice space, and you'll know of our guest today. And I just asked whether or not I can record the conversation. So it's not a scripted thing. It's not a pre-planned thing. It's not a hugely long interview. We're going to try and do kind of like bite-sized, unscripted conversations with industry practitioners and startup founders and all of the people in this space, just to try and bring you a little bit of extra content to keep you going during the week. And today's guest, if you have ever said these words, Alexa, play rain sounds, then you would have come across our guest. Our guest today is Nick Schwab, and he has been building Alexa skills for a few years now, since October 2016. He builds a lot of ambient sound skills, and if anyone has ever used the thunderstorm skill that's playing in the background now, or you've ever used white noise to get your baby to sleep, or you've ever used aeroplane sounds to keep you drifting off at night, then you would have come across one of Nick's skills. Nick is the founder of Invoked Apps, and in our conversation today we talk about a whole host of things, from long-form audio and Alexa adoption and user behavior to monetization, in-skill purchases, developer rewards, discovery, and a whole host of Alexa specific stuff. And we find out a little bit about how Nick has turned Invoked Apps into a platform, into a company that is generating 150,000 uses per day of his skills. This is a really interesting episode. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Nick Schwab. Yeah, so I've been wanting to speak to you for a while, actually. It's like I think you were one of the first people I kind of come across when I first started sort of looking into all this stuff. Quite a few months back, well, quite about a year ago now, actually. So you've been doing it for ages, haven't you?
I started in like February of 2016.
Wow, veteran then.
Yeah, the skills kit's been out for, I don't know what, like 3.5 years, maybe.
Really?
Maybe even 4. Yeah, it's been out for a little bit longer. I didn't get in right away. I waited a little bit just to see kind of the consumer adoption and developer adoption. And it just seemed clear that over time it was going to be a big deal.
Yeah. And long form audio in particular seems to be the biggest of deals, doesn't it? Like at the minute.
Yeah, for me, for sure. When the long form audio API or directives came out, I immediately thought about how I could start using these directives. And the reason I got into the whole ambient sound space is because I actually moved into an apartment, and then a couple months later, a noisy neighbor moved in above me. So she started getting up at like 5 a.m, and she had a dog that would bark for an hour after she left for work. And I didn't have to get up until like 7 or whatever. So, having this early morning wake up call at 5 a.m. every day of the week was kind of annoying. So I turned my Dot into the ambient sound machine, right? So I just made I recorded a track of rain sounds, and I just played that while I slept, and it helped block out the noise. I did that for about 4 weeks, and then I published it for everybody else to use, right? And from there, it just exploded. Totally unexpected, but it was super cool to see that kind of growth and see it continue to grow as more and more people get Alexa devices.
Yeah. And you've kind of, every time like over the last few weeks, because we're expecting the baby like literally any minute now, and over the last couple of weeks I've been sort of doing research. So we've got an Echo Dot in the baby's room, and I've been doing a bit of research and thinking, when it goes to sleep, can I find some white noise or like womb sounds, or maybe some sort of like gentle kind of ambience like thunderstorms or rain. And literally every single thing I search for, there's already a skill for it, and you've already done it. It's all invoked apps. It's literally, how many skills have you got now then? There's loads, isn't there?
There's 41 sounds, and I've published over 50 skills in total.
Wow. So are they all on the, so if there's 41 sounds, then the other lot are they all kind of like long form audio based as well, or are they something else?
So there's 41 individual sounds, so they just play one sound, and then there's 5 skills that are probably called consolidated sounds. So those are skills where you can actually access all 41 sounds in one skill. And with that too, I introduced ISPs and skill purchases, so you can actually mix sounds together through those skills.
So you can have like a, I don't know, thunderstorm with a sort of like fire crackling over the top of it or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's quite cool. How was that good? Cause I seen you tweeted the other day about the sort of in-skill purchasing stuff. Is it going well? That is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's super early for me. It's only been about 4 weeks since I released ISPs, but the early results are looking pretty good. I mean, I think overall I'm seeing around a 3% conversion for users, which kind of fits the bill with typical mobile space, right? And then the conversion rate from trial to paid is like 90%. It's staggering. So I think it's really promising. As long as you have the right product market fit, I think the in-skill purchases are going to make real businesses.
Yeah, that sounds really good. That so, have you noticed any patterns in terms of the sounds that people are putting together, or is it all just a bit random at the minute?
I haven't done any analysis on that yet, and it's not super high priority for me, just because I allow anybody to mix any 2 sounds together. So it's not going to really make me focus on any 2 sounds more than any other sounds. I look at more of like general usage and what sound requests that I get through my website.
Yeah. And can you see how long people tend to play them for? Do you know like how long people tend to have the sounds on for or not?
Yeah, so the skills by default, if you're using the single sound skills, they only play for an hour by default unless you tell it to loop. So I see about a 50-50 split between people who play it for just an hour, default, and then people who turn on looping and then play it, from like 10 p.m. at night until about 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning.
All right. So they're literally sleeping all the way through with it.
Yeah, they're literally sleeping all the way through with it. If you look at my Lambda spikes, it's so funny because you see my Lambda usage just shoot up like a bullet, like at 6 or 7 in the morning every day. It's so crazy.
That's fantastic. So if you think so, that's a decent kind of example of where you literally could be making money while you're sleeping there, couldn't you? That's
one way to look at it. Yeah.
So if someone pays for like the upgrade or whatever, puts 2 things together, gets to sleep with it, and keeps it running all night, it's like, it's mad. It's really interesting, that like.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I just kind of like fell into, But I've been super happy with the results of the skills, and all the user feedback is really cool. I mean, I every once in a while I get an email from somebody who's like, "The skill has changed my life. Like I sleep so much better now," or they just had a baby. Like you have a baby on the way, right?
Yeah.
And they just had a baby, and they play rain sounds or something to help the baby sleep, and in return, the parents can get a good sleep. So it's like, all right. Helping tons of different people from age 1 week to age 80. It's super cool.
So is there any other, is that the predominant use case for it then? It's kind of like ambience to help people sleep, or is there any other sort of use cases that you've noticed from speaking to people using it in that?
Yeah, I would say that at least 95% of usage is for sleep. If you look at my traffic patterns during the day, it gets down to maybe 6,000 users, like in the middle of the day using it. And then at night it spikes up to 150,000. So
wow. 150,000. That's pretty impressive. That when you said the predominant use case is on a night, and then you said that daytime is 6,000. I was like, 6,000 seems like quite a lot. That, to be fair. You know what I mean? So is it predominantly America then that you're getting usage from, or is it all over the world?
Yeah, it's predominantly America, but I do have the skills released in multiple regions. So it's they're available in the UK, they're available in Germany and Canada, and a few more regions as well that are coming out soon. So I would say that the split there is probably around 85% US, and then 15% elsewhere.
And where do you get the sounds from then? Like, do you use like sound libraries and stuff like that, or do you literally go out and record stuff and stuff like that? How do you sort of put it all together?
Yes, it depends. So there's some sounds that I'll just record right here at my house. There's some sounds that are actually computer generated, like white noise, pink noise, brown noise. Those are just like different frequencies of sound. And then there's some sounds that are kind of more obscure, so I license those.
Right, okay. That's interesting. And where do you get your ideas from then? Is it just like something will come to you at some point, or have you got like a backlog of stuff you want to work on, or like where do you get? Because there's literally, like, honestly, every sound I was searching for to try and see if it existed, it seemed to exist, and it had invoked underneath it also. Like, you've obviously got a lot covered. Like, where do you sort of get the ideas from?
So they started off as just ideas that I had, right? Just different sounds that I thought would be relaxing. And that I covered those sounds basically within like the first 3 months or so. And then during those 3 months, I had a website where people could go to request sounds. They just fill out a form, provide an optional email if they want some follow-up, and then I'd get that right in my inbox. And I would use that to kind of navigate my way into which new sounds I should add. And I would say that's how I've determined probably 75% of which sounds I add.
So what's the plan then? Are you sort of carrying on building out the sounds? Are you sort of like, obviously you're experimenting with the in-skill purchasing and that? Have you got like a sort of plan beyond that, or are you kind of just seeing how all that goes?
Yeah, in general, the ambient sounds space is really important to me. I have a ton of users that depend on it every day, and I think that improving those skills over time is super important. So I do plan on spending more time on that, whether it's adding more sounds, adding new locales, and then of course as a business, making sure that those in-skill purchases are performing in the best way that they can is super important for me. Right now the early results look really good, but I'm sure there's some tweaking that I can do to the upsell messaging to make those conversions even higher.
Yeah, wicked. So is it sort of like, can you see? I don't know, it might be at that stage now, I don't know. I heard on one of the, I can't remember which podcast it was now, it might have been the Alexa in Canada with Terry Fisher, perhaps, and you were saying that you work at Ford right now, is that right?
Yeah. So during the day, I work at Ford Motor Company as a software engineer, building an open source platform that allows third-party developers to expand their apps into the vehicle. So if you have, it's a good example, like Glimpse on your phone, and you have a Ford vehicle with Sync 3, then you can actually see the Glimpse app in your car, and you can interact with it on the car's navigation screen.
Okay, fair dues.
Yep.
And so do you envisage a future where you'll be able to make enough from invoked apps to then be able to focus on that full time?
I envision the future of that. I'm torn between my two passions though, because I love the voice space and I love cars, right?
Right.
So, if I do get to that point, do I switch from, the automotive space entirely into voice, or do I try to keep balancing the two? It's a tough decision for me,
Well, voice is starting to get quite a presence in cars, isn't it? I think Alexa, and was it BMW that announced Alexa? It'll be in all of their kind of new cars, and obviously if Ford are allowing people to build apps in their vehicles, surely a voice interface can't be far behind for Ford, is it?
Yeah, so BMW announced that they're going to be integrating Alexa into their cars, I think like directly into the head unit, and Ford actually already has an Alexa integration out. It's called the Ford Plus Alexa app. As well as the Lincoln Plus Alexa app. And if you have the app on your phone and then you get into your car and it's connected through Bluetooth, you will see the Alexa app pop up in your car. And then that allows you to either tap on it and speak an Alexa command, or just use the Alexa hot word to access Alexa right from your car.
Ah, right. Okay. So you're kind of already blending the two passions as it is, kind of, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit. So that Ford Plus Alexa app actually uses the technology that my team builds. So I'm not directly associated with that app, but indirectly a little bit. But yeah, I think long term, I'm super passionate about the voice space, and I would love to be able to do it full time. So I think once we reach that point, as as a consumer community and as a developer community, I think maybe I will make that switch. It'll just be a long thought process to make that happen.
It might be made easier if the adoption continues to go as it is. It's just literally like Amazon are selling millions and millions of units every month seemingly. So if the adoption keeps going as it is, and you keep up the pace with what you're doing with Invoked, I think that the choice might be made for you if it continues to generate a decent amount of money.
Yeah, it might. Of course, there's other benefits of working for Ford. Like, my team is great there. The benefits are great. The work hours are flexible. My boss is really generous with giving me time off to attend these voice events, which I have to take paid time off to do those things. But it's still, he's very generous with the time that he grants me off. So I see, for at least the foreseeable future, kind of handling both for a while.
Yeah, that's good. What's kind of exciting you then? Obviously, Voice 18 was like an immensely. It seems to just be sort of like I don't know. It seems to be an event that's really kicked off the whole voice thing. Like there's all kinds of brands there, and I've seen Panasonic were there, and there's like all kinds of like companies that you probably wouldn't expect to be there were there, and then all the activity on Twitter seems to be going mental. So what's exciting you? Obviously, aside from the fact that you're doing really well on the skill side of stuff, what else is exciting you about the sort of voice space at the minute?
Just seeing all the new developers come into the space. I mean, 2 years ago when I started this, I feel like there were really only like maybe a dozen really passionate developers about Alexa, and now, the community's grown to over 2,400, at least in the community-driven Alexa Slack. Oh, sorry, I just triggered my device. So just seeing the community grow, and especially at Voice Summit, man, I just felt like everybody was there. Like everybody who has built anything cool was there. And even a ton of different podcasters, right? I wish you were there, but Dustin was there, so that was cool. Yeah,
Dustin was there, yeah.
I think that was my second time meeting him. And just, man, just everybody. It was unbelievable to see all the big players in the same room, sharing their knowledge with the rest of the community.
Yeah, it does seem a really communal thing, doesn't it? Like, I think we spoke to Dominic Meisner and Tim Carler, 169 Labs, last week on the podcast, and they were kind of explaining it as though it's like a family, you know what I mean? Like the whole community is like a big family, and it kind of does feel like that, doesn't it? Everyone's just so sort of passionate and so generous with the time. It just feels like it's got a bit of a family kind of vibe about it, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, after one of the days at the Voice Summit conference, I actually hopped on a bus with like all those guys. There's actually a big group from Germany who were at the summit, and we all hopped on a bus together and went to a bar and just hung out afterward. It was super fun.
Yeah, that's class. I definitely want to try and get to the next one. Like, I think they were talking about maybe doing one in Europe. I think so. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. I think 169 Labs is actually hosting something in maybe Berlin.
Yeah, it's in Munich. Munich, yeah. So we're actually the media partner for that, which is really interesting. So that's in Munich on the 12th of October, and it's kind of like an all-day voice first kind of event for, I think it's predominantly businesses, but there'll be developers and stuff like that there, and it's Germany's just absolutely so vibrant, like in the voice space. It just seems to be like really taking off over there.
Yeah, I always tell people that, like, building for these other locales, especially Germany, it's the perfect time to do that, because those locales, those countries, they're starting to experience that initial growth that we saw about a year and a half ago in the U.S. So if you get on the bandwagon right now, like you're gonna hit that sweet spot, and you're gonna be more likely to be that top skill and perform really well over the long term.
Yeah, I think America seems to be like it's literally. I know that Alexa's been available over there for a lot longer, but it does seem to be a few years ahead of Europe, especially in terms of the user behavior and the adoption towards stuff. Like, what's your sort of? You mentioned 85% of usage is in America right now. Are you still seeing pretty decent growth in America, or is it kind of plateaued slightly?
Yeah, I still see decent growth. There's particular days that really drive the most growth, such as Prime Day and then around Christmas time. Both of those days pretty much cause a 20 to 30% spike in traffic that I typically retain over the long term as well. So those are huge events. And then there's a few different holidays like or like Father's Day and Mother's Day that might cause a spike as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, when I started this ambient sounds thing in October of 2016, I started off with just a few thousand users, like 4,000 users or so. And now I'm up to 150,000 a day. And that's, it's over 1.5 million per month. So, the growth is real, like it's happening. It's not quite at the same speed as like the smartphone revolution and what we saw with iOS, but at the same time, it's a totally different ecosystem. It's a totally different platform. The way we interact with these voice apps are vastly different than how we act with apps on our phone. So I think comparing the smartphone app space to the voice app space isn't quite fair. It's not quite apples to apples. But I do think that where we're heading in the voice space it's going to be the next big platform. And there's a few folks who are already doing really well. Like I know Volley is just killing it with their games. So Song Quiz, I think, is one of the best games on Alexa. And just a few other developers too are just doing really cool stuff, and they're getting the users. I mean, they deserve it. It's super cool.
Absolutely. I know LabWorks are doing really well as well in London. I think they do the Would You Rather skill. I don't know if you've played that. Yeah, that seems.
Yeah. And like the guys at 169 Labs, they did animal sounds. It's like a super simple skill that it just helps educate kids. And I guess they have like 500,000 users a month. It's great. It's great to see all these developers gaining traction.
Yeah, it's quite. So, what are you seeing in Europe then? Because like Alexa launched in France relatively recently. It's been in the UK for a year or so, Germany for quite a while. It seems, I read somewhere, I think yesterday, it's launching in Spain fairly soon. Are you seeing, from the 85% you've got in America, what kind of is the breakdown of Europe sort of usage? Are you getting quite a lot of usage in Europe? Like,
so yeah, I mean, the UK and Germany are definitely the heavy hitters in Europe. France, it's still really, really early. I am in France, but I think my stats are probably around like 1,000 users a week, maybe. So it's not a lot, but it's still, it's like day one for them, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the growth in Europe, it's there and it's happening. I think probably over, like you said, I think Europe is kind of a couple years behind the US. So in a couple of years, we'll see Europe having traffic that's similar to what we see today in the US.
Yeah. And when you get to the point of having 150,000 users a day, do you then, so I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you hosting everything with Amazon and using Lambda and all that sort of stuff? Or have you built something else to host stuff?
So I use AWS for a lot of stuff. I use it for I use Lambda for my APIs. I use DynamoDB for my database. And then I also use S3 and CloudFront for some of the audio content hosting. Then I also have another CDN partner that I use to kind of bear more of the load when it comes to streaming the actual audio. Because at the end of the day, I'm streaming over a petabyte of audio a month and around 19 terabytes a day.
Wow.
Like it's a ton of audio. It's mostly just an economical decision, right? Like AWS can be pretty, I mean, it's a great product, and but the pricing can be a little bit high depending on what your usage is and how much you're using. And in certain cases, they do like cut special deals if you're streaming a ton of audio. But there are other competitors out there that offer more competitive rates. So since we're so early in this voice space and ISPs aren't really there yet, it's super early to see the results of those. Saving money and cutting costs down is a really important thing right now. So I'm trying to be as frugal as possible.
But there is still a cost then to obviously hosting that much and streaming that much audio. There's still an outgoing that you've got to pay every month to do it.
Oh yeah. I mean, my bills every month are in the low thousands.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So it's not cheap. Fortunately, the Alexa Developer Rewards really helps offset that. So.
Oh, okay. So you've been getting the developer rewards then, yeah? Do you get those on a per skill basis, or do you just get general rewards for having so much usage on all your skills?
Yeah, it's on a per skill per region, or per skill per category per region basis. So just a little bit about the way it works, at least in my own. What I've seen, this isn't official by Amazon or anything like that by any means. I think the top performer in a category in a region gets $5,000 for the month.
Right. When you say region, do you mean a region within America, or would you class America as a region?
The U.S. would be a region.
All right, okay.
So like right now, I think developer rewards are in the U.S., the U.K., Germany, and I think they just announced it for Japan. So those 4 locales. So if you have one skill that's in all 4 of those locales, and it's the top performer in every locale, you'll make $20,000.
Wow! Every month?
Yeah, every month. Yeah, like you can earn a lot of money with it, but you got to be one of the top performers, which is really hard to do, right? And like even with all my ambient sound skills, like there's a bunch of those sounds that are kind of more obscure, so they don't really land in a good place in that scale. So like, some might earn a couple $1,000 in a month, and some might earn just like $40 in the month. It wildly varies. But I think for a lot of skills, the ambient sound skills are kind of a special case because they stream a lot of audio, so they're higher expenses than most skills. Whereas a lot of other skills, like Volley's games and just other trivia games and things like that, they're just Lambda calls, and Lambda is super cheap. DynamoDB is super cheap. I mean, most people can probably run a skill for probably less than $50 a month without a problem.
But it gets pretty expensive when what did you say? It's some petabytes of data every day.
So it's around 19 terabytes per day, and then over a petabyte per month.
That's mental, isn't it?
It's crazy.
That is really good. No, but it's good. It's good that the Amazon developer rewards. So they'll pay £5,000 for the top skill, and then what do they do? How far down do they go? Like, do they pick like top 10, or do they just keep on going until they run out of money?
So I don't know how that works exactly. Just based on what I've seen my own skills, make a few $1,000s. I've hit that $5,000 cap a couple of times for different skills. But I've also seen some skills make like $20 for the month. So I don't really know what the range is, how many skills qualify. But there definitely is a very wide range.
Yeah. Wicked. And so what have you done then to get your skills sort of one of the it always comes back to this quite often, is that people are saying that the developer rewards, to get the developer rewards you need to have traffic, to get traffic you need to be able to be discovered, and that's kind of the thing that everyone looks at. So have you done anything in particular to get that amount of users, or have you just happened to be there when people are people just genuinely looking for ambient sounds kind of things, or have you done anything to promote them, or how's it kind of happened?
I haven't really run any advertising, to be honest. I've dabbled with it here and there, like when Amazon used to offer this like Amazon giveaways, that you could offer a product on Amazon for free by entering this like giveaway contest. And one of the things that you could do was have the person tweet something as their entry into the contest or giveaway. So I tried that a couple times. It generates a lot of noise, but doesn't really generate a lot of real traffic to the skill. So that, it was cool to generate the noise on social media, but since it wasn't driving real numbers, it wasn't something that I was interested in doing long term. other than that, I mean, I haven't done any advertising. It's been just people searching for rain sounds or thunderstorm sounds, just natural SEO, right? And because of like when a skill reaches a certain point, Amazon starts to pay attention to it, and they'll promote it through like the banners or through they call them the sliders on the skill homepage, and that drives a ton of traffic. Like, I don't think there's any advertising thing that you could do that would compare to the traffic that you get from being in those banners, from being in those sliders.
Because I think that's everybody who is going to look for skills sees it, don't they? Whereas all the little developers can do what they want to try and shout at as many people as they can, but ultimately everyone who wants to know about it goes to that spot, don't they, in the Amazon skill store. So I can see how that's like a sort of, it's almost like the holy grail, isn't it, for skill promotion?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, being in the banner actually generally drives less traffic than being like number one in one of the sliders. If you're in like the number one space on the very first slider, you might see like a 10 to 15 X traffic increase, like during that period that you're being promoted. Whereas if you're in the banner, you might see around a 4X traffic increase.
Right, that's interesting. It almost feels a bit more natural, doesn't it, being in the slider? The banner feels maybe it's a little bit more promotional, whereas if it's in the slider, it's kind of like, here's what we recommend sort of thing. It feels a little bit more natural, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people don't go to the Alexa skill store and click through, swipe through the banners, right? They see the sliders and they're like, oh yeah, okay, these are like the recommended skills. So people look through those, and I think that is the key way to get traffic.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on sort of like advertising in there then? Do you think that Amazon should allow people to pay to be there, or do you think that would kind of just send a flood of rich companies to the top of the listings and kind of like, deprioritize everyone else?
There's been a lot of debate about that in the community. I do think that discovery is a problem, and there's some way that we can solve it, right? I don't think that opening that space to advertising is the way. For that reason that you said, I think that the heavy hitters, or like the big companies who are making decent amount of money, or who have like the huge marketing budgets, like they're going to own that space, because once they see the traffic that it drives, why would they ever stop paying for those ads? It just wouldn't be fair to the newcomers, right? I think we can find more creative solutions to solve that problem. I don't know what they are yet, but I know Amazon has a bunch of people thinking about it.
Yeah. It gets spoke about often enough, doesn't it? I can't see them not thinking about this seriously if it's something that crops up all the time. It's ever since I started the podcast at the start of the year, that was the very first thing that the very first person said that I spoke to, and it seems to be just like a running theme constantly throughout the year is trying to figure out what this whole discovery thing looks like.
Yeah, it's hard, because when we look at our phones, like when you install an app on your phone, you can remember that it's there by opening your app drawer and seeing the icon there. In voice, you don't have anything like that experience. You don't have anything that can help you recall what apps you've installed, right, or activated. It's an entirely different way that we interact with these devices and these apps. So it's gonna take a creative solution. And I don't think anybody really knows what that is yet, but I think we'll get there. Maybe not this year, maybe next year.
Yeah. It's all part of the evolution of something so new, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we see the same thing with like the iOS App Store. If you get promoted in the iOS App Store, like that drives crazy traffic. I read stories about that all the time. And it makes sense that the same holds true for Alexa as well, or even Google Assistant. I think it's still early days. There's still a lot of folks who don't have these assistants yet that I think will over the course of the next 1 to 2 years. And the holidays have proven time and time again to be huge events for more people getting these devices, especially with like the rise of the smart home, right? Like I just bought a home. I'm starting to put Alexa switches and stuff, everything in it. And that'll be more compelling for people to get these devices and start to actually explore what else they can do with them besides smart home features and listening to radio or whatever. I think we're getting there. It's a slower process than the iOS App Store or the Android App Store, but we're going to get there.
Yeah, and it's only a matter of time before people end up getting. I think there's two things. One was, I think Tim Carler of 169 Labs mentioned that in his talk at the Voice Summit, he asked how many people have either built a skill or done something in voice, and about 70% of people hadn't. And then if you kind of combine that with, I think it was a VoiceBot study that was looking at the smart speaker adoption in America, and it found, I can't remember the exact figures, but it was a significant proportion of households have got more than one speaker. So it's almost as if like people get one, they have a bit of experimentation, then they'll get another one, but then if you couple that with how many people there are that haven't even thought about it yet, the opportunities, I think it must be massive in the next kind of few years.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think once somebody gets one of these devices in their home, has the opportunity to play with it and see how useful it can be, that's the trigger point where they say, all right, I'm going to invest in the smart home. Like I'm going to get 5 more of these devices and put them in every room. And at that point, like now the consumer's made an investment. Now the consumer's made an investment, we're going to see the developers start to get paid off in terms of traffic and monetization efforts. So I think we're going to see it. Right now, ISPs, especially, they're only in the United States. But I can't imagine that Amazon isn't trying hard to get those rolled out into more countries. And with that, the growth in the United States and in Europe, like it's happening. It's voice is going to be the next, $1 million space for tons of people. I'm sure of it.
And hopefully Invoked apps will be right there waiting.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed.
Nice one. So what are you looking forward to most then over the next year or so?
Oh man. I'm just excited to see the results of ISPs. I think like both in the eyes of Amazon and in the eyes of the large developer community, seeing proof that ISPs can work and that businesses can really run on Amazon or Alexa as a platform is going to be a turning point for the whole ecosystem. Not just for Alexa, but also for like Google Assistant and maybe Microsoft Cortana. Who knows, right? Like once we can prove that developers can be self-sustainable, companies can be self-sustainable. Like I think it's going to cause kind of like a gold rush in the voice space.
That was Nick Schwab of Invoked Apps. I cannot believe that platform is getting 150,000 uses per day. That is seriously impressive. I think Nick's right that the adoption in Europe is certainly going to increase as the Echo devices continue to expand and Google Home continues to expand. Really, really interesting times and really prosperous times for Nick, certainly. It sounds as though the in-skill purchases are working well. Only available in America at the moment, so looking forward to seeing that released in the UK, which as Nick says, it undoubtedly will be. If you haven't tried some of the Invoked app skills, then you should do. As we mentioned, I'm expecting a baby very, very soon. And the white noise and womb sounds and rain sounds and all that kind of stuff is going to be literally my bread and butter over the next few weeks. So thank you, Nick, for putting those things together. Thank you for sharing your stories. I hope that inspires some of you to start creating some voice experiences. Thank you all for listening as well. Thank you, Govey, for this suggestion to publish a little bit more regularly. And thank you all for listening. Until next time, see you later.